it took place and we know the Torah
Beit Sheni. It was 200 years into Beit Sheni, I think.
there's a rabbi in London that felt it's very important to educate rabbis, and he would, if there was a student rabbi that would come to him, he would ask them which which festival came first historically, Chanukah or Purim? Do you know the answer?
Purim.
Excellent, good. You'd be in. Purim happened between the first temple and the second temple, and Chanukah happened during the second temple period. Okay.
Purim is in the Tanakh.
Yes, you're right. Chanukah is the first post-Tanakh. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a very interesting machloket in the Gemara about the source of this mitzvah of Chanukah. How can we make this blessing? And then we're going to spend a little bit of time. The Gemara presents there's an argument about the source of the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles. We're going to look at the two sources and sort of the ramifications of each of the sources. The first source is more of a legal source, and therefore we're going to look at more halachic approaches to that source. And the second source is more, I called it poetic, because one of the sources comes from a piece of legislative writing in the Torah, and the other source comes from a poem in the Torah, and it reflects different views of takanot of Chachamim. Okay, so we're going to start with the Gemara, the famous Gemara in Shabbat. I say famous Gemara, there's very, very little, as you know, very, very little in the Gemara about mitzvah of Chanukah. It's only about 2 daf that appear in Shabbat. Chanukah, the mitzvah of Chanukah, isn't mentioned at all in the Mishnah. There's a reference to Chanukah. Does anyone know where the reference to Chanukah is in the Mishnah?
I heard that it's in Shabbat when your Chanukah candles fall off and they burn a building or something.
No, it's in Bava Kama, about a person who is, if there's a fire outside if he has a light, a lamp outside his shop,
Who's responsible?
and there's an animal walking past in Rishut HaRabim and knocks it
Three of
over.
us learned it just this morning.
Oh, excellent! So it's not really a reference to it's a mention of Chanukah in the Mishnah. So at least we know in the time of the Mishnah they were celebrating Chanukah, but it only appears in the Gemara. So we're going to look at this beautiful, beautiful piece of Gemara. Omar Rav Chia bar Ashi Omar Rav Hamadlik ner shel Chanukah tzarich levarech. Somebody who lights a Chanukah light must make a blessing on that light. Rav Yirmiyah Amar haroeh ner Chanukah tzarich levarech. And then Rav Yirmiyah adds and says, not only to someone who lights, but I also make a bracha on seeing the Chanukah light. Rabbi Yehuda says, Yom Rishon haroeh mevarech shtayim umadlik mevarech shalosh. Rabbi Yehuda says, on the first day, someone who sees a Chanukah light makes 2 brachot, someone who lights it makes 3. Mikan va'elech madlik umevarech shtayim, and then the person who is lighting continues with 2. V'roeh mevarech achat. Which one? Ma'ed. Which one do you stop saying? You only say it on the first night. Ma'ed Zman, we say Shechiyanu on the first night, and we don't say it on the other nights. I just want to mention a small halachic point about how we light our Chanukah lights. The first bracha is a bracha that we make before we light the Chanukah lights. So we say Asher Kishanu Sotav Tzivanu Ladlik Ner Shel Chanukah. That is the bracha that I make before I light my Chanukah lights. However, the second bracha, She'asa Nisim, mentioned over here, She'asa Nisim, and certainly the third bracha, which is She'echiyanu, are not blessings that I make before I light, they're brachot that I make as I'm lighting. So what I should do is I make the first bracha, Ladlik Ner Shel Chanukah, but then having completed the first bracha, I've now made the bracha, the pre-lighting bracha, and therefore when I say the second bracha, I can light my Chanukiah as I'm making the second bracha, She'asa Nisim. And in fact, it's not even a bad idea to do that in order to distinguish. The first one is the bracha that I make before lighting, but the second bracha that I'm making is about seeing the Chanukah lights, and therefore I can light it as I'm making the second bracha. You follow?
That's the reference here. Then.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He's talking about two.
So seeing it is She'asa Nisim, which
Right.
can only be done once we light it, obviously.
Right, exactly. Yes, so there are two brachot. It's quite unusual. Let's say on Shabbat, we only make one bracha. Nachon ladlik ner shel Shabbat. On Yom Tov, ladlik ner shel Yom Tov. Here we make two brachot. Ladlik ner shel Chanukah, and then after that, she'asa nisim. Because there are two things that I'm doing. I am technically lighting the Chanukiah, because that's how people will see it. But really, there is this pirsum hanes. Not only am I lighting, but I'm creating this pirsum hanes. I look at the light as well, not just light the light. I look at the light, and therefore I make two brachot, one on the lighting and one on the looking.
Oh, so that's considered the bracha of a ro'eh.
Yes. Sha'asa nisim. Yeah.
Now the obvious question, I'm sure it's addressed. What if one then, because here it's separate. It's not even, doesn't even say it's the same person. What if on my way home to go light, I see somebody else?
No.
That's what I was thinking.
No. Nowadays,
So it'll be brought out
really,
clearly in the Gemara.
yeah.
After
Nowadays, even let's say nowadays, if I'm busy, or I know some out of town and I can't get home to light my Chanukah lights. First of all, nowadays you can probably light until much later than you could light in previous generations.
Actually, if there's like a 24-hour Walmart, you can light up until morning.
Yeah.
Because the shuk is always busy.
Right. Yeah, you can light later. So either you light later or you can.
Bracha. What follows? I see a bracha. I'm sorry. I see the lighting of another candle of another person's house.
Right.
I bypass my bracha on that mitzvah.
Yes, I do, because really it's the mitzvah of the ro'eh. It's not. Then if you're walking around Yerushalayim, you'd be making brachot.
Right.
No, because ideally it's all on the same Chanukiah. No,
I know that's how we do it. But I mean more how it's written here.
No, you're right. That's how nowadays we don't really do it this way nowadays, because there's not a situation in which I wouldn't either light myself or have a shaliach light on my behalf.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Here's a question for you, Rob.
Yes.
What about a blind individual? He can still light the Chanukiah.
Oh my
But
gosh!
there's actually a
But
halacha
he's-
on that brought down in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. He should have someone else light it for him.
He's capable of lighting it. So
Right, the thing is,
physically
though, is
capable of
that
lighting
the
it.
mitzvah is to see it, and he can't really see the mitzvah is the problem. So he should have someone else light it for him. And if he's not with anybody else, then he should light it for himself. I'm pretty sure without a bracha though.
Yeah, I think that is a problem. It's a terrible thing. There's certain mitzvot that somebody who's blind is patur from doing, because it's a mitzvah of a re'iyah. And since I can't see it, therefore I can't fulfill the mitzvah.
The question's not original from you. The question was raised by one of my rabbis earlier this week.
Okay.
So, I wanted to see what you would say on that.
Excellent.
You had the answer.
Yeah, I had the answer.
Oh my
It was
goodness.
that the individual, assuming that the individual could safely light the Chanukiah, he wouldn't really have to, because he'd be patur.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can
Shalom Ita. Yes.
regarding electrical light, say for example, I've heard that like even on Shabbat, the light itself we can be
Say the bracha.
say the bracha and then say it's more like lighting a Shabbat candle. So what about Chanukah if there's electrical?
Excellent question. So there is a difference between a Chanukah and Shabbos lights, partly to do with the role of Shabbat lights or Chanukah lights. On Shabbat, if you were in a tricky situation, it would be possible to make the bracha. Oh, shalom aleichem, how are you doing? What a pleasure to see you. It would be possible on Shabbat to make the bracha, ladlik ner shel Shabbat, on electric lights.
Right.
I mean, it's not something you
Ideal,
should
but
do.
yeah.
However, not for Chanukah. Chanukah lights, you can't do Chanukah lights with electricity. I think it's more to do with you're creating this flame on Chanukah. That's why some people are makpid to only use olive oil. According to some shittot, you only fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah lights. We don't paskin like that. That's why people often use candles. But there is a shita that you can only use olive oil for Chanukah lights. The truth is, there's a shita that says the same thing about Shabbos lights as well. But for Shabbat you can, for Chanukah you can't.
Okay, so Hanukkah, if it is electrical, it's just for extra decoration. But
Yeah, you got, I mean, it's cute, but you'd never make a bracha on an electric Hanukkah.
yeah. Because most of the time I see in the street, especially with Chabad, they used to have the,
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a fantastic Pirusumanes, but you wouldn't make a bracha on it.
Yeah. Like every street has a Hanukkah now, the electric Hanukkah.
And isn't it
In
amazing?
Jerusalem.
What a world. Yeah, not like that in London.
Either inclusivity by secular businesses that don't include everyone, and I think from Chabad, it's probably just to remind people, secular Jews, oh yeah, I should light my Chanukah tonight. But otherwise, I think just decorative, because why not?
I'm sure you'll see
Festival of Lights.
Menorah and Walmart.
These are old stories already. What are you going to talk about? What they did in the
Okay, we're gonna plod on.
old country already.
Rabbi, I have one question.
Yo, Michael.
Is there some relationship between Chanukah and Shabbat, or the reason why it's written in Masechet Shabbat is because they're both?
No, well, the truth is, it's in the second parak of Masechet Shabbat is. You all know this. You all know the second parak of Shabbat. Some of you might even know it off by heart.
Such a humble class.
Yes. Look at that, these Talmidei Chachomim. Isn't that amazing? So it's quite early on in the Bamin Madikin or Vamein Madikin starts the conversation on Shabbat lights, and then it moves from Shabbat lights to Chanukah lights. That's the context. That's how we got into Masechet Shabbat. I'm just going to add in one snippet of information on that about Shabbat and Chanukah. But I'm sure some of you might know this already. If you don't have enough money and you can't afford both Chanukah and Shabbat, do you know which one you
Chanukah?
do?
Chanukah.
Shabbat.
Oh wow, good. We certainly have a correct answer in the room. That is the good news.
Well, Shabbos there's an order, Lenny, Lechem Neros and Yayin. But for Hanukkah you're supposed to, if it means selling your clothes, you sell your clothes.
Right,
to
yes,
it.
yes. But the truth is,
You're right, though.
yes, I'm afraid to say Shabbat wins. Shabbat wins. You use Shabbat. So Rabbi Sachs, I mean, that it is true that we have a principle in Halacha of Tadir v'she'ino Tadir Kodem. In this context, I don't think it applies, but I'm not sure why.
One can use an electric, as you said, if it to be.
Ah,
You
clever.
can use an electric light on Shabbos.
Right, but this question was asked before Thomas Edison.
Can you,
So
can you, can you be motzi for Ashkenazim? You can't be motzi by others in almost every case, or except for some. But can you be motzi by Shabbat candles? If you go to a family, say, "Can you please light for me the Shabbat candles?" and I buy myself the Hanukkah candles.
That's not in the parameter of the
Oh, yeah, that's... So I'll tell you what, Rabbi Sachs says something very sweet. I can see you're all trying to find creative ways to allow everyone to do everything. But really it's the principle. The principle, because we were talking about Shabbat lights and Hanukkah lights. Rabbi Sachs says that Shabbat is to create Shalom Bayit. Nachon? Shabbat is to create Shalom Bayit. And Hanukkah commemorates the victory of the Jewish people against the Mityavnim in the times of the Second Temple. So if I have one that's there to remind me about peace, and the other one that's there to remind me about war, the one that's there to remind me about peace, Shalom Bayit, takes precedence over the other reason. Now, based on that, I actually heard a shir not that long ago from a rabbi in YU called Rabbi Willick. He's one of the Rosh Yeshiva there, and he said that his wife, when he was teaching at YU, his wife was working, and because she worked, sometimes she wasn't always home for Hanukkah lighting time. and he was always makpid to wait for his wife to come home. So let's say the candle lighting time here in Jerusalem is, I think, around 4:40. If you follow the position of the Gra, and then you light at Shkiat HaChama, or 10 past 5 if you light after Teta Kochav, and she would come home at 8 o'clock, 3 hours late. But he would always wait to light with his wife, because he said that Shlom Bayit, meaning he took this principle of when he lights with his wife, that creates this moment of Shlom Bayit. So as we see that Shlom Bayit takes precedence over Chanukah lights, not just in that if I only have one candle, I'm going to light my Chanukah candle. I'm going to light my Shabbat rather than lighting my Chanukah candle. But more than that, in my lighting of my Chanukah lights, Shlom Bayit has to be an important factor, because Shlom Bayit is big enough to push away Chanukah altogether. So therefore I must ensure that I maintain my Shlom Bayit in my Hadlakat Neirot, and therefore he would wait for his wife to come home. You follow? Okay. That was just as an aside.
It has to be from Galut, because here everybody leaves early.
Yes, the truth is,
right?
In Chutz
Here everybody leaves
Haaretz,
early.
in Chutz Haaretz, even in the Koilel, like someone's involved in learning, they do not finish the Seder early to come home. But in Israel, everyone, like the whole country, finishes early, which is beautiful. Okay, so now let's go. This is really the ikar of what I want to talk about today. The Gemara tells us, I'm going to skip Mai Mevarech. I'm on the second line from the end on the first source. Mai Mevarech. What bracha do you make on your Chanukah lights? Asher kshanu tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. That's the bracha that we say. Now the Gemara asks a very well-known question. Hey Chan Sivan, where did God command us? And now we have two positions. The first one is presented by Rabbi Aviyah, and he quotes a pasuk in Devarim Perek Yud Zayin. Me from the verse of Lotasur. And on source number 2, I'm going to read the whole pasuk out to you. Al pi Torah asher yorucha v'al mishpat asher yormu lecha ta'aseh. According to the Torah that he teaches you, and according to the rules, the teaching, the judgments that he says to you, ta'aseh, do in accordance with that. Lo tasur, do not sway. Mina davari asher yigidu lecha, do not sway from that which the rabbis teach you, yaminu small, neither right nor left. That's quite strong. Nachon, it is the source, according to Rabbi Aviyah, of the importance of rabbinic authority. It's not good enough for me to read the Torah and say, I think the Torah means A. I have to read the Torah according to the way that is understood by Chazal. And if Chazal establish gezerot, takanot, I'm bound by their takanot based on this pasuk of Lotasur. Okay. Rabbi Nehemiah, however, has a different source. And his source is in source number 3, which is from the beginning of Parashat Ha'azinu, Shemot Lamod Bet, and it's from a poem. Ha'azinu is a poem, as you know. Zechor Yomot Olam, remember the days of yore. Binu Shnot Dor Vador, the wisdom of many generations. Sha'al Avicha, ask your father, V'yagetcha, and he will tell you, Zekenecha v'yomrulach, your elders, and they will say to you. So we see that there is a binding commitment to listen to the words of the elders, and that is a second source for the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. So we're saying the truth is there is no source for Chanukah in the Torah, but there is a source for rabbinic authority in the Torah, and there's an argument between Rabbi Aviyah and Rabbi Nehemiah concerning what is the source in the Torah of a. You follow? Okay, that's that. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to look at each of these two positions. They're very different. The first one, Devarim Perek Yud Zayin, is within the context of a legal section of the Torah. Parashat Shoftim is not telling a story, it's telling us halakha. So it makes sense that I'm being told to follow, as part of the legislative structure of halakha, understand that there are a commitment to Dat Chachamim. You follow that? What Rabbi Avia says. And Rabbi Nehemiah's source is a more, I don't know, like coming from a different place in the brain almost. He's not coming from a legal source, but he's understanding the words of a poem. I mean, Hazinu, which is a poem, saying it's obvious from this poem that we have to follow that. We have to follow the understanding of how the Chachamim understand our commitment, our responsibilities in this world. You follow? Yes. But it's beautiful because there are different types of sources, and it's possible that the different types of sources reflect different ways of understanding halakha. What I'm going to do is, partly because I enjoy very much halakha, and I also enjoy very much chassidut, rather than focusing on different approaches, which one's more, this is a more legal and the other one's more poetic. What we'll see is the first one is very much a legal basis for mitzvot to Rabbanan. The second source, this Sha'al Avicha v'yagetcha, is a beautiful understanding dafka of the mitzvah of Chanukah. Understanding how the rabbis taught us about Chanukah. Okay, but we're going to start with the Rambam. The Rambam, as you can see, quotes only one of the two psukim. The Rambam, Maimonides, as you know, summarizes Jewish law. He took the whole of the Gemara and he restructured it and he made it much more accessible to everybody. And when he quotes this little sugya that we're reading, he only quotes one of the psukim. I'm going to read it in source number 4. V'chein, kol ha-mitzvah, shehen mitivrei sofrim, bein mitzvah shuhu chova mitivreihem, k'kol mikra megillah v'hadlakat ner Shabbat v'hadlakat ner Chanukah. All of the mitzvot which are rabbinic, whether they are d'Rabbanan, like reading the Megillah, lighting Shabbos candles, or lighting Chanukah candles, ben mitzvot she'enan chova como eruv netilat yadayim, and other ones that they are not a chiyuv, like eruv or netilat yadayim, mevarech ala kol kodem nasiyatan asher k'shanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu. On all of these things, we say asher k'shanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Even when when I wash my hands before I eat bread. There is no, God didn't tell us to wash our hands, it's because the Kohanim, and it's almost like a part of a Zeichel Churban, that we wash our hands. Perhaps even further away than the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. But we still, on all of those things, say, Asher K'shanu Mitzvotav V'tzivanu, V'heichan Tzivanu. So you see exactly the same words as we saw in the Gemara. Heichan Tzivanu B'Torah. Where does the Torah tell us this? Shekatuv ba asher yomru lecha ta'aseh. Which one is he quoting? Can you see?
First one.
Excellent. We can see the Rambam follows Rabbi Avia. The legal source. Asher yomru lecha ta'aseh. Nimtza inyan advarim v'atza'an kach hu asher k'shanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu shetzivta bahen lishmo me'elu shetzivanu להדליק נר של חנוכה או לקרות את המקרא וכן שאר כל המצוות שמדברי סופרים. We see that God commanded us to listen to these people. So it's not God didn't command me to light Chanukah lights. God commanded me to listen to Chazal, and Chazal told me to light Chanukah lights. So if I can say by extension, I'm following Hashem's will in lighting Chanukah lights. Does that make sense? Okay, that's the Rambam. But I just want to show you something brilliant in the Rambam. It's very, very subtle, and I was debating whether to put this in, but it's such a beautiful idea, and you're such interesting people. I hope you'll like this. There's one little problem in the Rambam. It's a tiny little problem, but I just want to point it out to you. In the Gemara, when the Gemara quoted the verse of Rabbi Avia, the Gemara quoted the second part of the verse. Do you see that? In the penultimate line in the Gemara, Rabbi Avia Omer, me, from the verse of Lot Asur. Do you see that? Now look at the Rambam. The Rambam says, Asher Katuv Ba, Asher Yomru Lecha Ta'aseh. The Rambam, in quoting the same verse, quotes the beginning of that verse and not the end of the verse. Now that is very interesting because, as you know, the Rambam is very precise. And that is obviously not a coincidence. So why does the Rambam, even though he's following the position of Rabbi Avia, why does the Rambam, in quoting Rabbi Avia's pasuk, quote not the part of the pasuk that is brought that Rabbi Avia says in the Gemara, but the piece of text, the piece of the Torah that the Rambam uses is the other part of the pasuk. You follow the question?
Yes.
Good question, right?
Excellent.
Oh, good. Did you get that? So, Ivante it's Hashe'ela?
Not really, but continue.
No, we're not continuing.
It's a good one to get.
No, it's a really good question. I'm going to show you. If you look in the Gemara, that's source number 1. Do you see source number 1? Go to the penultimate line, the line that starts with the words Rabbi Avia. Do you see that?
The line before last.
Oh, the line before the last line.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
Rabbi Avia Omer, and then do you see it says Mi lot asur. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Do you see that? It says Mi lot asur.
Okay.
That is what the Gemara says. Rabbi Avia learns from those words Mi lot asur. Now I have underlined in source number 4, when the Rambam quotes that verse, he quotes from different words in that verse. So the question is, why does the Rambam not quote the words that appear in the Gemara, but rather quotes the other part of the verse?
Maybe you had another draft or where they had mistakes.
It's rather trying to avoid those sorts of... No, there are... The truth is, it's a lovely discussion to have another day about the text of the Torah. The Rambam had this very, very famous text called the Aleppo Codex. We call it the Aleppo Codex nowadays. But nowadays, Baruch Hashem, in Israel, there's a new text called the Yerushalayim Codex, which is based on the Aleppo Codex. Anyway, the Rambam, that's not the answer. That's what I mean to say. The text is the same text.
So the Gemara is giving us a law. I'm sorry, Ezra, go ahead.
Oh, he's good.
No, I was
Oh,
going to say you go ahead.
No, please. No, because now if you're right, I could agree. If you're wrong,
So the Gemara is emphasizing the aspect of don't veer from it, and the Rambam is emphasizing the aspect of what they told you to do.
Yes, exactly. The verse, according to the Rambam, is not about, because the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is not telling us not to do something, it's telling us to do something. And therefore, the pertinent part of the posuk is not it's not about the fence around the Torah, it's about the takanot where they establish new Asher Yomru Lecha. Nachon?
The question is now more on the Gemara. Why does the Gemara?
No, but it could be that the Gemara is only reminding us of the verse. Do you know what I mean? I think that in the Gemara, they might have assumed that everyone's got the Tanakh at their fingertips. So it's not. I'm not saying that is. I'm saying that pasuk. I just say pasuk. It's just like saying pasuk gimel.
but
Do you understand?
that's really the heart of the pasuk is lot tasur. That's why they would cite it.
Yeah, but the Rambam wants to emphasize.
Right, he wants to emphasize that it's not a lot taseh, but a taseh.
Yeah, exactly. So we see that in source number 5, which is the Kesef Mishnah. Now, the Kesef Mishnah is written by a very famous person, also known as the Bet Yosef.
Kesef Mishnah was written by
Yes. Now, he wrote a few important works. He wrote a commentary on the Torah called the Bet Yosef. Commentary called the Bet Yosef. And he wrote a commentary on the Rambam called the Kesef Mishnah. Subsequently, he then wrote the Shulchan Aruch, which is, some people say it's based on the Bet Yosef, or it's not based on the Bet Yosef, but meaning his work of halacha, he chose to base off of the Torah rather than of the Rambam, Mishnah Torah. So look what he says, Kesef Mishnah. Ve'echan sivanu, b'perek pamim madlikin, as we went by V'rach, one second, I think we can keep going. V'katav Rabbeinu. Do you see that on the third line down?
On the fourth or the 15th?
Third.
Source number 5, source 5, third line, fourth word, with a full stop beforehand, or whatever you call those dots. Excellent. V'katav Rabbeinu, the Rambam. Tamo shel Rabbi Avia shehu nira yoter v'od amrinu b'brachot mishametu kol milta d'rabbanan asmucha alav delot asur alma ke Rabbi Avia kamilan. We see that the Rambam follows Rabbi Avia. The source of rabbinic authority is Rabbi Avia. The Katav Rabbeinu, however, the Rambam in quoting that pasuk says Asher yormu l'chataseh shuhu b'lashon aseh. The Katub pasuk atzmo, meaning he writes the exactly what Ariel said and what Michael was thinking, or maybe it was Michael said and Ariel was thinking, but you both said it or thought it, and it's brilliant. There are two parts to the pasuk. There is the positive following the rabbis when they establish something new, and there is following them they put a fence around that which is asur. What's pertinent in our context is that they are adding something new, and therefore the Rambam quotes that part of the pasuk. Okay, but it seems that the Rambam and then also the Kesef Mishnah and then Shulchan Aruch would see Rabbi Avia as the source, which makes sense because it's a legal issue, so it makes sense that you would draw the source from a legal section in the Torah. Joy? Okay, now we'll go to the Torah Tamima. But this is all focusing on Rabbi Avia, and then we're going to turn in a few minutes to Rabbi Nehemiah and a different approach to halacha. Va'av ki ikar mitzvah. I'm now in source number 6. Va'av ki ikar mitzvah pasuk lo tasur kai al abeit din hagadol. B'chol zot yesh kam mitzvah b'chiyuv lishmor l'tevrei chachamim shebechol dor k'viyat rasha le'el. V'da. No, shekatav harambam beperek aleph halacha gimel mibrachot v'zeh leshon kol mitzvah shem midivrei sofrim mevarech asher kshan v'tzutav v'tzivanu ve'echan tzivanu b'torah shekatuv bar asher yormu lecha ta'aseh ad kan leshono. So far, all I've done in the Torah Tumima is quoted that which we've already said. So the Torah Tumima quotes the Rambam. Do you know what the Torah Tumima is? Let me just say a word about Torah Tumima. I'm so sorry. What chutzpah.
Means
End quote.
End of quote. I'm so sorry. What chutzpah. Torah Tamima is a very, very important book of halacha. He may even be in this room right now. It's sort of, I will say, what he did was, there was a rabbi called Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein. He wrote this, excellent. He wrote, what he did was, he took the Torah, and whenever there was a drasha in Chazal, based on the pasuk, he would quote the drasha, and then explain the drasha in the commentary afterwards. So, for example, when you are reading the Torah, and if you have a look over here, if you look at the top of source number 6, it says, Torah Tamima Herot Devarim Yud Zayin. What's happened is the Rambam has quoted, so let's say where this pasuk, Ala Torah She Yorucha. So what the Torah Tumima will do is, on that pasuk on the Torah, it'll then have a little footnote after the pasuk. It'll say, and it'll quote the position of Rabbi Avia. You follow? In other words, he'll connect the Torah Shebal Peh with the Torah Shebechtav. So normally I read the Gemara and then I get quoted psukim. Here I read psukim and I get quoted the Gemara. It's like the flip side. You follow? And then each time he does that, he explains that drasha. You follow? So we're reading now Rabbi Epstein's understanding of the drasha of Rabbi Avia. And he started in explaining the drasha of Rabbi Avia by quoting the Rambam, which is a very good idea because the Rambam has deleted Rabbi Nehemiah. You follow? Because the Gemara quoted both, and then when the Rambam taught this teaching of rabbinical authority, we know where did God command us to do all these mitzvot? When the Rambam taught that halacha, he deleted Rabbi Nehemiah. So it makes perfect sense for Torah Tumima to stick in that Rambam there to show that this is a very powerful drasha of Rabbi Avia. You follow? And now he continues. So now we can actually read the words of the Torah Tumima. Va'acharei asher keyadu kol divrei harambam ba'im b'diyuk nimratz יש להעיר מה ששונה בזה מלשון הגמרא בדרשו, שנאמר להיכן ציוונו בלא תסור, והוא תפס תחילת הפסוק אשר יאמרו לך תעשה. וקשה לומר שעשה כן שלא במתכוון, ונראה לומר כי כיוון בזה למה שכתב הראש, דלא מצינו ברכה על לא תעשה, אלא רק עשה, עיין שם. So he goes further than that which we saw in the Kesef Mishnah. He says, lo tasur could not be the source of a mitzvah to make a bracha. You follow? It's going even further than what you're saying. You never make a bracha on a lo ta'aseh. So for example, let's say I don't eat bacon, so I don't make a bracha on that. You follow?
Right.
So therefore, the pasuk of lo tasur can teach me about my commitment to the rabbis, but it couldn't teach me about how I can make a bracha. You follow? And the question of Rabbi Aviyah is, how can I make a bracha on rabbinic legislation? So the fact that the Torah says lo tasur is not good enough, because lo tasur is a negative, and I never make a bracha for not doing something. You follow? So let's say they put a fence around something, and I follow their fence. I wouldn't make a bracha on not being mechalel Shabbat, or not eating. Let's say the rabbi said
The lack of something.
yeah, you're not, the Torah says you can't have meat and milk. The rabbis added chicken. So I'm not going to make it, there's no bracha
Every time I avoid
every
something.
time yeah, exactly. So therefore the pasuk of lo tasur isn't enough to explain how I can make a bracha. You follow? Al kain efshar sheyesod brachat hamitzvah hu al lo tasur. That can't be the source. The lo shaykh bracha al zeh. Kivan to heed lo taseh, because it's avoiding something. V'lachen, and therefore Tafasa Rambam Reisha Tikra, he quotes the beginning of the verse, Asher yomru lecha ta'aseh, that you follow that which they tell you to do. If I do something, I can make a bracha, but I can't make a bracha on not doing something, and therefore the source can't be lo tasur, because that would just explain that I am committed to Chazal. But to make a bracha is not good enough to just say that I'm committed to them. I have to be committed not just in avoiding, because I wouldn't make a bracha on avoiding breaking what Chazal tell me to.
Inaction.
Yeah, oh exactly. Oh, you're so helpful. Yeah, I wouldn't make a bracha on inaction. Exactly. I could only make a bracha on action, and I only learn the action from the first part of the verse. And therefore he quotes the first part. It's really, he's building off the wise words of Michael and Ariel.
So he's clarifying the Rambam, but while he's clarifying the Rambam, he's giving us more of a question to the Gemara. Because obviously the Gemara didn't see this as well.
Yeah, but it could be the
He's
Gemara.
just saying that pasuk by that hinge word.
Yeah. I think in the Gemara, perhaps there was an expectation that the Torah was at your fingertips. So it wasn't really saying those words.
But
It was just saying,
concept.
it's just saying like, instead of saying Pasuk Gimel, we'll say Lo Tasur.
Okay.
And then, oh yeah,
Oh, I know.
like,
Okay, right.
Rabbi, I understand that okay, they just assume that they're just using those words reference to pasuk, but is there some significance to which words they use to choose to be like, oh, that pasuk, like there's a bunch of words, and the Chazal always only use like 2 or 3 words to reference a pasuk.
Yeah, in the
So is it just the
Rambam,
most
there
memorable
definitely
words,
is.
or-
That's a very, very good question. Because sometimes, when you're learning Gemara, and the Gemara quotes a pasuk, sometimes the relevant bit of the pasuk for the drasha is not in the words that are quoted, which is a very good question.
Rashi has to finish off the pasuk.
Yes, yeah, exactly, which is interesting and unusual.
Well, there's a general assumption about Chazal that you had already if you were learning Gemara, you already Nachon. Exactly, and therefore I imagine in the Gemara when a pasuk is the expectation is as if there's one word in the text, I should be able to finish the rest of the pasuk.
Or your teacher
Yeah. Halavai, al kulanu. Okay, with that, we conclude the first source. That is, the first approach. That is the approach of Rabbi Avia. Where do we have this power? Where do Chazal have the power to create halacha? Hadlakat ner Shabbat, hadlakat ner Chanukah. Where's that power from? This pasuk of Lo tasur mikol hadavar she'yichidcha yuminu shmal. Joy, joy, joy. Good. Okay, now Rabbi Nechemiah. Rabbi Nechemiah learns from a different source. Rabbi Nechemiah learns from a pasuk right at the end of the Torah from Parashat Ha'azinu. Now, what we're going to say today is mamash going to blow your socks off. Because the truth is, just for you to understand, when Rabbi Nechemiah read the Torah, he got to the pasuk that Rabbi Avia quoted. And he didn't accept that, meaning that wasn't good for him. And he said, no, that's not it. It's a different pasuk of Sha'al avicha v'yagetcha zekeinecha v'yomru lach. You follow? Now, it's easier, I think, for Rabbi Avia to say, that's poetic. It's not talking about, that's not legislation. That's just saying, there's Masoret and you have to take people before you seriously. A bit like, the respect that we as Jews are educated to have towards our elders. Right? But Rabbi Nechemiah read Rabbi Avia's pasuk and said, no, that's not it. It's this pasuk from the end of Devarim. Sha'al avicha v'yagetcha. So he has a very different approach to how the rabbis were able to legislate the mitzvah of Chanukah. And I suppose it's a non-legal reason because he's using a non-legal pasuk. Oh, no, I don't mean a non-legal. Oh, no, I don't know how to say that. What I mean to say is, it's more
legalese.
Yeah, that's much better. You're so helpful. Exactly, it's less of a.
Psychotic. No, that's it.
Yeah. Although Agadah is not a great source for halakha. Okay, so we're going to start with the Ritva. The Ritva on the Gemara that we looked at, with which we started. Rav Nachman Amar Mish'al Avecha v'Yagetcha Zekenecha v'Yomer Lach. Right? Pirush Lo Nichalei La'an Suba Alav de Lo Tasur K'da Amra b'Mesechet Brachot Kulu Alav de Lo Tasur Asmechim Rabbanu Mishum Teshani Mitzvah Zu She'ein La Shum Ikar Min HaTorah. He says the rabbis Lo Tasur Mikol HaDavarim Asher, like don't break away from that which don't deviate from that which the rabbis told us. The assumption is that there is a corpus of halakha that or there's an idea that we get from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the rabbis are taking that idea from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and explaining what it means for us, right? But Rabbi Nechemiah says that Chanukah isn't that there's an idea from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and then Chazal are explaining it. He says, Ein la shum ikar min haTorah. There is no mention that the events happened hundreds of years afterwards. So it's not something I can say that they're elaborating or explaining. It's something new which is being created, and for something new that's being created, Lo Tasur doesn't do it. So how does this pasuk do it? So now I want to really the answer to the question is in source number 10. The Tiferet Shlomo. But in order to get to the answer in source number 10, I want to go on a little journey with you about Chanukah in sources 8 and 9. And I hope as a result of our journey in 8 and 9, we'll then understand how Sha'al Avicha v'Yagetcha is the source when we get to source number 10. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going back now to the beginning of the sugya. We looked at the Gemara on Daf Kaf Gimel. 2 pages earlier was Kaf Aleph. On Kaf Aleph, which is, so we've just gone back in the Gemara, they give the history of Chanukah. I'm going to read the history of Chanukah, and I want to share something interesting. Okay, my Chanukah, the Gemara asks this famous question, what is Chanukah? The Tanu Rabbana, the rabbis taught in a Braita. B'kafei b'Kislev Yomei de Chanukah. The 25th of Kislev is Chanukah. Timnei Inhun, 8 days. Delo lemifso, we don't make hespedim. Or delo lehitanot behun, we don't fast on them. Why? K'shenichnesu Yevanim laheichal. When the Greeks entered the holy temple, Tim'u kol hashmanim, they made all of the oil impure. Ukishegavra malchut beit Chashmonai v'nitzchum. And then when the Chashmonaim, the Hasmoneans, defeated them, Badku, they checked, V'lo matzu ela pach echad shel shemen. They only found one cruse of oil. Shahaya munach b'chotamo shel Kohen Gadol. It had the stamp of the high priest. V'lo haya bo ela ladlik yom echad. They only had enough water. They only had enough. Oil. Good, to last for one day. V'naso banes v'idliku menu shmona yamim. And they lasted for 8 days. Now look at that's the story. Now this is quite interesting. The Shana Acheret means the following year. Kav'um v'am asaum yamim Torah yamim tovim b'halel v'hodaya. The following year or another year, it was fixed and they made it into times of Hallel, praise and gratitude. Okay, 2 questions on this story. And we're going to look at an answer to these 2 questions in the Sfat Emet, source number 9. The first question is, the Greeks had control over the temple for many, many years. And they made a huge effort in order to impurify every cruse of oil. How is it possible that they missed a cruse of oil? And then the Chashmonaim walk in and they find it. I mean, it's the likelihood of that happening is very, very low. They made a concerted effort. They were very solid. They were very thorough. And yet they missed one cruse of oil. That's the first question. The second question is, why the delay? Meaning we had this amazing miracle, and then nothing happened for a year. And then the following year, they then decided we're going to establish a festival. Contrast that, for example, with Purim, where immediately at the end of the story we realize this is a very special day and it was established as a day of festivities. It wasn't that they waited another year and then they decided to establish a day of festivities, but here they wait for a year. 2 questions. Yes.
So
now, third question.
The reason why I think that the cruse of oil of drug was found, it was because that was the same drug that Yaakov went back for.
Oh!
And so
Last week's Parsha. Pachim Ktanim.
Yeah. I heard that he hid it, and he hid it in a way that was going to be used for the Chanukah menorah. So he must have hid it so well that he
Yes.
must have foreseen the future that the Greeks were going to come and destroy it, and so he hid it in a place where they would not be able to find it. But he told his generations where to find it, and it was all that time brought down to the Chashmonaim, where it is, when in need of time, and in need of I'm not sure if you can call it distress, but in need of hopefulness.
Excellent.
In the need of oil. And so that's how. It's that everyone knew where it is. He just didn't tell the Greeks where it was.
Yeah, that's excellent. There is indeed a position. I wasn't going to go into this, Yaakov Avinu, but you're quite right. That there is...
it was a Rashi on it.
Yeah.
That was the same.
Yes. Yeah, excellent. Because it's the same word, pach, though, but is an unusual word. Okay. That's excellent. I want to go... I'm sure that the Sfat Emet was influenced by what you just said. He certainly knew it. He's got an approach. I want to learn what the Sfat Emet says on the first question, then also to talk about the second question. Okay. So in source number 9, Tim'u kol hashmanim, they impurified all of the oil. Av shenishar pach echad, there was one left over. Now, Adonenu Morinu Ziknenu, this is the Baal Sfat Emet quoting his grandfather, who's a Chidushei Harim, Amar, Shepach zeh remesh shel olam nishar nekuta b'Yisrael, asher HaKadosh Baruch Hu magin eleh shelo yesh sham maga nochri, v'al zeh ne'emar magen Avraham. He says that God would never let everything to go. He would never allow a situation where there'd be no goodness left. You find there's always been like a pintel yid in Yiddish. Is that German even? Like there's this point where even if everything is full, there's a tiny spark that's never ever going to be never be extinguished. Now, the Sfat Emet, we'll read it in a minute, but I'll summarize very quickly beforehand. He says that you can always find that which you're looking for. But only a Jew has got the eyes to see that tiny spark. Let's say you can destroy everything, but you can never extinguish that eternal flame, the eternal flame of emunah, the eternal flame of goodness in every single Jew. So the world could be falling apart, but there's like this tiny flame, the nekuda that can't be extinguished. But no one can see it other than those who know to look for it. It's lahavdil 1,000 times. We always see. I mean, in a very trivial way to explain this, we always see that which we're looking for. So if you get a new pair of glasses, you'll see everyone else with a new pair of glasses. You follow? If you I don't know, buy a new jacket, you'll notice everyone's jackets. Not even consciously, because you're looking for that which you're thinking about. You follow?
Like you learn a new word
A
and
bias.
suddenly you see it come up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you learn a new word, you hear it everywhere. Exactly. Only the Jews are looking for the pintalayit. You hear that? Like that nekuda pnimit, that tiny spark of goodness. Even though everything has fallen apart, it was only the Jews that were able to look for it, because they were the only ones that knew that it has to be there. You follow? But I know it's there because it's impossible for it to. Yeah, it's so they thought we've done it. That's it. It's all gone. But the Jew who knew that it can't be extinguished, he knew he'd be able to find it. So they would destroy everything. There can't be anything left now. But they know it has to be there. So therefore they found it. You hear that? It's a beautiful teaching in Emunah. I'm going to read it inside. Okay. One second, I'm on the third line. Now, this nekuda, this final point of goodness that can't be extinguished, tzricha chipus alidei she'adam ma'amin sheyesh b'chol dor nekuda genuza v'chofes b'kol kocho v'nimseit lo kol kach batku v'lo matzu rak pach echad bichlal she'tzricha chipus. He says it can only be found by somebody who really believes that it's there. You follow? If I understand that the Jewish people can't be extinguished, so then I believe that with every essence in my soul, so then I'll be able to see the Pintele Yid. But somebody else who believes it is destroyed, they won't see it, because they'll think it's all over. You follow? Isn't that a brilliant idea? Okay, that is what the Chanukah lights are. Shemi'irin, shenuchal limtzo nekuda hagenuza. כי כמו כן בגלות זה נמצא נקודה גנוזה שלא נטמאת. וכן בנפש כל ישראל יש נקודה נשמת אלוקה ממעל. He said this is that search and that finding of the nekuda, of that tiny bit of goodness, and then allowing that goodness to light up the world. That is the story of Chanukah. You hear? That finding that nekuda, you have to believe that it's there. And when you believe that it's there, then Hashem opens your eyes and you can see it. But the Greeks believed that they destroyed everything, so therefore they never saw it. But the Jews who understood that it can't be destroyed, it has to be here, so they were blessed with the eyes to find it. Atem shomim hazeh? But he says it's true then, it's true now. Same that same nekuda in every single Jew. We're taking this idea of not just a pach echad shel shemen, but you can't destroy that goodness from a Jew. Meaning you can never lose your Jew. You can never lose that nekuda, that sort of essence that would allow you one day to return home. And because you could never lose it, those with eyes can see it and find it in you and help you light up again.
Know that it must be there.
Exactly.
The persistence.
Exactly.
To know it must be there.
והמצוות הן נרות שנוכל למצוא נקודה. Right. כי נר השם נשמת אדם חופש כל חדרי בטן. ובזמן זה שיש מצווה בנרות נפתחים כל דברים שנקראים נרות, כי כן הם עניין המצוות שכל דבר שיש בו אחיזה בהמצווה בשם וברמז. יש לו עליה על ידי המצווה, וזה שכתוב דרושים לכל חפציהם. So he's saying over here that this the Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, that we are each like a Chanukah oil, we are each like a Chanukah spark. That's it. And just like that, in that time, the Chanukah spark, they thought they destroyed it, but we managed to bring it to life. So too, today, every little Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, every single Jew, you can lift up that spark. Does that make sense to you? Now, with this idea, I just want to add, he says elsewhere, but I didn't bring it in here now. With this idea, we understand why they waited till the following year in order to establish Chanukah. What the Sfat Emet explains is, at the end of this great miracle, so they entered the Heichal, they discovered, because they knew it had to be there, they discovered this nikudah, this point that can't be destroyed. They knew it had to be there, and therefore they found it, and then they lit up the world with that light. At the end of Chanukah, they thought this was an amazing one-off experience. That was amazing. Like we've had like Matan Torah or some other great historical event. The day I was learning with somebody today about the Yoshua, when the walls of Jericho fell down. That's an amazing historical event, but it doesn't necessarily, this miracle doesn't necessarily turn it into a festival, right? What happened was, the following year, the next year, they realized that all those little sparks of all the sweet Eden, because everyone's a little ner, started lighting up again. So they came to the following year, and they realized this miracle of being able to find that nekudah, just like they managed to do it the previous year. When the following year came round to the 25th of Kislev, they saw that same light came out again. I can look and I can see this goodness, I can see this spark in a light, in a person, that I don't normally see. And they realized that wasn't a one-off discovery of a light in the Beit of this cruise of oil in the Beit HaMikdash. Yes, it was something that happened in history. And then the following year, when we came back, we realized that same ability on the 25th of Kislev, the previous year, that allowed them to find the cruise of oil, this year allows me to, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, to see it in the oil, to see it in the people around me, to observe this goodness in everybody else, that sometimes if you're not looking for it, I might not see it. You follow? I mean, like my Chanukah eyes wasn't a one-off experience. Turns out the Chanukah eyes is an annual gift. And the Chanukah, lighting the Chanukah lights, allows me to open up that light for the whole year round. Does that make sense? That's why the following... Okay, everything clear so far, Sfat Emet? Isn't that a beautiful idea? With all of that, we can come back now to Rabbi Nehemiah and understand why he brought the verse of Sha'al avicha v'yagetcha zekenecha v'yomulach. Source number 10. He says, Chanukah, what is Chanukah? Hu hit orut ha'or harishon. Chanukah, I'm reconnecting to that first light that we spoke about a minute ago. V'lachen nasu hanisim b'yamim ahem bazman hazeh. And therefore the miracles that happen then as they happen now. V'v'chinat mi she'asa nisim la'avotenu. V'chein amru b'gemor b'Chanukah v'hechan tzivanu. Where were we commanded? Umeshani sha'al avicha v'yagetcha zekenecha v'yomulach. Almost like the Seder night story. Meaning, on this, as I mentioned a minute ago, the second year, they realized that we have Chanukah eyes. So then the third year, they said, well, let's keep going, we've got Chanukah eyes. And then 25 years later, or 50 years later, when those people passed on, they told their children about the story of the Chanukah lights, and then they started lighting, and it became a festival, not because it was instituted, but because they realized there's something happening in the world on this special day. But how did that pass from generation to generation? Because Sha'al Avicha, just like the first generation, guess what happened last year? and then it happened again this year, and then it's going to happen next year. It's not a legislative
ruling.
decision. Yeah, exactly. It's not a ruling. Something happened in the temple on that magical 25th of Kislev.
It's a commemoration, I guess.
Yeah, and they realized the following year that wasn't a one-off event. It turns out on the 25th of Kislev, God allows us to see things that I don't see the rest of the year. You follow? So it wasn't, I make the bracha not because I'm following sort of, I don't mean to say cold, but I mean just pure halachic methodology. Something happened on that first year, and then as we see in the Gemara, the following year, the rabbis decided wasn't a one-off event. It wasn't like the walls of Jericho falling down. There was a one-off event, and then we'll remember the event. This is a revolution in the Jewish calendar. We have this day that we can see things, just like they were able to see the cruse of oil that no one else could see. I can see this nekuda pnimit. You follow? And then שנאמר שאל אביך ויגדך זקנך ויאמר לו הנה אין להבין תירוץ הזה והוא ששאל והיכן ציוונו מהיכן נוגע הציווי. Where do we get the mitzvah? ומשני שאל אביך ויגדך. What's the source of it? The source is not a legal source. I mean, I don't know how to put it differently, but it is a legal idea, but it's not based on cold legal legislation. It's based on an event. And the following year, we realized this wasn't a one-off. This is going to be something every year. That's why we're told the following year they decided to fix it as an annual holiday. And then in each generation, we understand that there is this gift on the 25th of Kislev that we're able to see a pinta layid. You're able to see this light on the 25th of Kislev that you can't see the rest of the year. The Romans can't see it. The Greeks can't see it. They spent years in the temple and they never saw it. We walked straight in and we saw it straight away. We were blessed with eyes to see something, but it wasn't a one-off. Every year, the following year, my gosh, I can do it again. And that's how the festival of Chanukah was created, according to Rabbi Nehemiah. So according to this, the argument between Rabbi Avia and Rabbi Nehemiah is huge. It's about the essence of Chanukah. According to Rabbi Avia, there's a rules. That's how the Rambam understands it. There are rules of how the rabbis can add to the Torah, and following those rules based on the pasuk in Parashat Shoftim. But according to Rabbi Nehemiah, Chanukah is different. It's not a legislation, but it's not a legislative experience. Something happened on that day that created a mark for the rest of time, and we commemorate that change in history that happened at that moment. We commemorate it by lighting our Chanukah lights in the hope that the spark of that light then will be rekindled and will be blessed with the eyes to see that which they saw then. We should be blessed to see in our Chanukah now. So we should be blessed. We should all be blessed. Yehi Ratzon for all of us that we should light our Chanukah lights, and we should be blessed to see the goodness in the world around us, but most importantly, though, to be able to see the goodness in ourselves. Yishar Koach, have a wonderful day.